When the U.S. slapped 100% tariffs on Chinese goods, the retaliation was silent but seismic. China tightened its grip on rare earth exports, and within days,
The dollar is falling. The empire is fading. But your voice is rising. Don't just watch history happen. Be part of it. Why'd have you checkmark subscribe to this channel for more fearless analysis from Richard Wolff and voices the mainstream media refuses to platform?
the U.S. stock market lost $1.5 trillion. Tech giants wobbled, crypto crashed, and military supply chains were thrown into uncertainty. This wasn't just another trade war skirmish. It was a calculated move in a long-standing geopolitical standoff, and China knew exactly where to hit. The rare earth monopoly it spent decades building. With over 90% of global processing under its control and strategic reserves in places like Myanmar and Greenland, Beijing had quietly transformed itself into an economic gatekeeper. The consequences are unraveling now, in real time. This video unpacks how China's rare earth dominance became a strategic weapon and why it's so difficult to counter. From the collapse of U.S. production after the fall of Mountain Pass to China's brutal environmental trade-offs and the 1+5 consolidation campaign, the monopoly was never accidental. It was built for this moment. As the West scrambles to rebuild supply chains, fund alternatives like magnet-free motors, and partner with countries like Australia and Vietnam, one truth is becoming clear: regaining independence will take decades. This isn't just about minerals. It's a fight for the future of global power. It's not a bluff. It's not a test. It's a full-blown global economic shock, and it's coming from Beijing. China's rare earths ban has detonated across the global economy, sending tech stocks tumbling, crypto markets spiraling, and supply chains into crisis mode. This isn't just a skirmish over minerals. It's a deliberate escalation in the most critical resource war of the 21st century. Rare earth elements, critical to electric vehicles, smartphones, semiconductors, fighter jets, and even the magnets in wind turbines, are now under lock and key. And the keys? Held tightly by the Chinese Communist Party. This is the outcome of decades of state-led planning by Beijing. The Chinese government didn't stumble into dominance over rare earths, it built it, brick by brick, through environmental exploitation, foreign acquisitions, and political coercion. While the West was offshoring, deregulating, and underestimating the strategic value of these materials, China was cornering the market. Today, it controls over 90% of the world's rare earth processing capacity. Let that sink in: 90%. The consequences were immediate. Following China's export restrictions, Washington retaliated with a sweeping 100% tariff on Chinese goods and slapped restrictions on advanced American technologies being exported to China. This economic tit-for-tat didn't stay contained. It went nuclear. The U.S. stock market lost $1.5 trillion in value almost overnight. Technology companies, heavily reliant on Chinese processed rare earths, led the collapse. Cryptocurrencies crashed, semiconductor supply chains started to seize up, and across every major industry, alarm bells rang out. This isn't just about two countries in conflict. It's about the global economy, built on the assumption that these materials would always be accessible. That assumption is dead. From EV batteries to missile guidance systems, the entire modern world runs on rare earths, and now the flow has been politically weaponized. And China has done this before. In 2010, it cut off rare earth exports to Japan over a territorial dispute. That wasn't just a warning shot, it was a proof of concept, a demonstration of what happens when a resource superpower pulls the plug. Now they've done it again on a global scale. The United States is scrambling. It once led the world in rare earth production, with the Mountain Pass mine in California at the forefront. but regulatory overreach, environmental litigation, and lack of political foresight crippled the industry. The U.S. allowed processing capacity to disappear. It outsourced critical supply chains to China, assuming globalization would guarantee access. That strategic blunder has now become a national security crisis. China, meanwhile, has played the long game with ruthless efficiency. Through its 1+5 campaign, Beijing consolidated dozens of small mining firms into powerful state-controlled giants. It invested in reserves in Myanmar, locked in strategic positions in Greenland, and signed shadowy deals across Africa and Southeast Asia. It was never just about extraction, it was about leverage, and the leverage is working. Today, the West finds itself dependent on an adversary for the resources it needs to power its economies, defend its nations, and innovate its future. The cost of rebuilding these supply chains is staggering. Processing plants don't appear overnight. Machinery to handle rare earths is largely made in China. The environmental regulations required in the US, Europe, and Canada create a high-cost barrier. And the geopolitical race to secure reserves means the competition is fierce and unforgiving. Then there's the environmental price. China's rare earth dominance came at an immense human cost. In the mining regions of Inner Mongolia and Jiangxi province, entire landscapes have been destroyed, rivers poisoned, soil rendered infertile, cancer clusters, toxic sludge. This was not a hidden consequence. It was a calculated sacrifice. Beijing was willing to pollute its own land, harm its own people, and hollow out entire communities for the sake of industrial dominance. That brutal cost created the foundation for their global monopoly. In contrast, the West is now trying to rebuild under entirely different terms: cleaner, more sustainable, more ethical, but infinitely slower. Innovation is essential, but innovation takes time. Recycling electronic waste to extract rare earths is one path. So is developing magnet-free motors. Companies like Neon Magnetics are pioneering alternatives that don't rely on scarce elements, but they're still in early stages. In the meantime, the world remains at the mercy of China's control. And this isn't just an economic story, it's geopolitical. These minerals don't just power your phone, they power fighter jets, submarines, missile systems. Rare earths are embedded in every part of modern defense infrastructure. This is a resource weapon, a pressure point that Beijing can press at any moment. It's a signal that the era of unconstrained globalization is over. National resilience is back on the agenda. The response from the West has been slow but growing. Australia, with its rich rare earth reserves, is becoming a key partner. Vietnam is rising as a potential supplier. Saudi Arabia, flush with cash and eager to diversify, is investing heavily in extraction technology. The U.S. is funding domestic exploration projects, fast-tracking mine permits, and pumping money into processing innovation. But no matter how fast they move, it's a long game. This crisis didn't happen overnight, and it won't be solved overnight. Strategically, the rare earth standoff represents a broader global shift. The dominance of any one nation over a foundational material changes the balance of power. China's grip on rare earths is more than a commercial advantage. It's a geopolitical chess move. And so far, the West has been playing checkers. There's no easy path out of this, no quick fix. The West must rebuild industrial capacity that's been gutted for decades. It must develop new technologies that can substitute or bypass rare earths altogether. It must forge international alliances rooted in shared security and mutual access, not just profit. And it must learn from its mistakes. Outsourcing critical supply chains to geopolitical rivals is a gamble that ends in crisis. The rare earth meltdown is not a standalone event. It's part of a longer arc, a strategic confrontation over who controls the future of technology, defense, and economic power. It will define the global order for decades to come, and it demands a response that's bigger than tariffs, bigger than sanctions, and bigger than political posturing. It demands resilience. The only way forward is to invest in long-term strategies, supply chain independence, environmental responsibility, technological innovation, and real international coordination. Otherwise, the next time China flips the switch, the consequences may go far beyond crashing markets. It could paralyze entire sectors of the economy, and worse, cripple national defense capabilities in a time of conflict. This is the new era. Resource politics is no longer about oil and gas. It's about lithium, cobalt, nickel, and at the top of that list, rare earths. Whoever controls them controls the future. And right now, that future is being held hostage. If you want to stay informed on the stories that actually matter, the ones that will shape the next decade, not just the next news cycle, subscribe, share this video, and drop your thoughts in the comments. This isn't just about economics, it's about power. And we're going to follow every move. Stay with us, because this crisis is only just beginning. The rare earths ban isn't a temporary disruption. It's not a momentary shock to the market. It is a strategic recalibration of power, executed with surgical precision by a country that has been planning this moment for decades. And the rest of the world is now scrambling to react to something it should have seen coming. This is what economic warfare looks like in the 21st century. It's not tanks and bombs, it's minerals, it's bottlenecks, it's a chokehold on the components that keep the entire digital and industrial world spinning. And China is using its monopoly not just as a bargaining chip, but as a geopolitical weapon. Let's be clear. This wasn't just a commercial decision. Beijing's move to restrict exports was timed, targeted, and tactical. It came after the U.S. imposed sweeping tariffs and export bans on Chinese tech firms. It came in the middle of rising global tensions over Taiwan, over chip manufacturing, over AI and cyber warfare. This is retaliation, but it's also a warning, a show of strength, and a test of Western resilience. So far, the results aren't looking great. The U.S. stock market cratered. Tech giants like Tesla, Apple, and Nvidia, all heavily dependent on rare earth inputs, took major hits. Semiconductor firms are now staring down production delays, price hikes, and material shortages. Cryptocurrencies, already volatile, were rocked by the uncertainty. The ripple effect traveled fast. Manufacturing forecasts were revised downward. Suppliers entered panic mode. Analysts started drawing parallels to the oil shocks of the 1970s. But this time it's not oil, it's dysprosium, neodymium, praseodymium. The names may be obscure, but their value couldn't be higher. Without them, magnets don't work, batteries don't store power, fighter jets don't fly, satellites don't stabilize. This isn't the future, it's now. And for all the patriotic speeches and tough talk coming out of Western capitals, the cold truth is this: there is no short-term workaround. That's not fear-mongering, that's a fact. The West's processing infrastructure is decades behind. The machinery, the chemical refinement processes, the trained labor force, it's all been outsourced, dismantled, or ignored. And the countries that do have reserves, many of them are already under Chinese influence. Through infrastructure investments, loans, and resource agreements, China has quietly secured stakes in dozens of key mining operations across the developing world. In other words, this isn't just a domestic problem, it's a global disadvantage. Western countries are now trying to reboot their own industries, but the hill is steep. There are initiatives underway, yes. The U.S. is pouring money into Mountain Pass again. Europe is exploring mines in Sweden and building processing plants in Estonia. Australia is stepping up extraction. Japan is working on recycling programs to recover rare earths from electronic waste. These are important moves, but they won't solve the immediate crisis, because the rare earths game is not just about digging minerals out of the ground, it's about what happens after: the processing, the metallurgy, the production of specialized alloys and components. And that's where China still dominates. Even if the West manages to extract its own resources, many of them still get shipped to China for processing. That's the choke point. That's the vulnerability. And it's been that way for years. Only now it's being fully weaponized. The environmental angle only makes this more difficult. China built its dominance through practices the West could never politically tolerate: toxic lakes of waste, radioactive runoff, devastated ecosystems, mining towns left in ruin, human suffering accepted as collateral damage in the pursuit of economic control. Now Western countries face a dilemma: rebuild with higher standards and slower results, or race to catch up by loosening environmental protections and taking political heat. There's no easy path, but there is a right one. Long-term independence won't come from trying to beat China at its own game. It will come from changing the rules entirely. That's where innovation matters: developing new materials that can replace rare earths, building magnet-free motor technology, recycling rare earths from old electronics, investing in chemistry, materials science, and industrial design that reduces reliance altogether. Companies like Neon Magnetics are working on precisely that: engineering materials that don't require the traditional rare earth input. These aren't just science projects, they are national security initiatives, because the future will belong to whoever can break the dependency. This is the real strategic race, not just for minerals, but for alternatives, for new ideas, for new systems that can't be held hostage every time geopolitical tensions flare. And here's where international cooperation becomes essential. No country, not even the U.S., can solve this on its own. The supply chain has to be global, resilient, and redundant. That means working with Australia, with Vietnam, with Brazil, with African partners. It means forming real alliances, not just trade deals, but technology-sharing partnerships. It means treating rare earth access the way we treat oil routes, semiconductor fabs, and undersea cables, as critical infrastructure. The West needs to stop reacting and start strategizing, because while China is flexing its dominance now, the long-term game is still wide open. If the U.S. and its allies move quickly, invest smartly, and cooperate fully, they can decouple from Chinese supply. Not completely, but enough to neutralize the threat, enough to weather the next crisis without market panic, enough to preserve technological sovereignty. But it's going to take more than funding announcements and policy white papers. It's going to take national will, coordinated action, real political leadership willing to prioritize long-term resilience over short-term market gains. Leaders who understand that rare earths aren't just a supply issue, they're a survival issue. That without control over the materials that power your economy, you don't have real independence. You don't have security. You have risk, baked in and growing. And if that isn't clear now, it never will be. The current ban has already exposed the fragility of our systems, but it also offers a rare opportunity, a moment of clarity, a chance to finally stop outsourcing the parts of our economy that matter the most. The West has the resources. It has the brain power. What it needs is urgency and commitment, because make no mistake, this isn't the last time China will use rare earths as a weapon. And next time, it might not just be about markets. It could be about defense. It could be about infrastructure. It could be in the middle of a war. That's the end game of this crisis. Rare earths are no longer just a trade issue. They are a front line in the battle for global influence. Whoever controls them will dictate the terms of the future. And right now, that control is dangerously lopsided. The only way to shift that balance is through innovation, cooperation, and a complete restructuring of how we think about critical materials, not as commodities, not as line items on a spreadsheet, but as strategic assets embedded in everything from your smartphone to your national defense. The clock is ticking. The damage is done, but the future is still unwritten. We can't afford to be done, not when the stakes are this high. This isn't some tech glitch or temporary supply snag. This is a foundational shift in global power, engineered by a country that knew exactly what it was doing. China didn't just corner the market, it built the market, and now they're weaponizing it at will. The U.S. and its allies didn't lose the rare earths race by accident. They gave it away, bit by bit, in the name of cheap labor, lower costs, faster profits. One mine shut down here, one factory moved there, until the entire infrastructure that once gave the West dominance was hollowed out and sold off, handed over to Beijing without a fight. And now that system is turning against them. You want to build electric vehicles? You need rare earths. You want to build drones, missiles, satellites, next-gen wireless networks. You need rare earths. Every future-focused industry is now tangled in a supply chain that China controls. And that's not a trade problem. That's a sovereignty problem. Let's call it what it is. Decades of complacency that turned into dependency. And now that dependency has become a liability. Beijing knows it. Washington knows it. Brussels, Tokyo, Canberra, they all know it. But knowledge doesn't mean preparedness. It doesn't build refineries or train engineers. It doesn't dig new mines or build international alliances. That takes commitment. And the West has been missing that for years, trading away strategic resources for short-term political comfort and corporate convenience. Now the bill has come due, and the Chinese Communist Party is collecting. So what happens next? Either the West gets serious or it slips further into irrelevance. Either it builds a real industrial base to process these materials ethically and efficiently, or it keeps pretending that press releases and pilot programs are enough. Either it invests in the hard infrastructure and cutting-edge R&D required to replace rare earths, or it stays stuck, begging for supply and reacting to every export ban with panic. Because make no mistake, this is going to happen again. China's not just capable of pulling this stunt, they're willing. They've done it to Japan. They're doing it to the West. And unless the balance of power changes, they'll keep doing it. So the only question is whether this latest ban is the wake-up call we finally needed, or just another headline we'll forget in a week. Don't forget it. This is the front line of a global economic conflict that will define the next decade. If you care about sovereignty, stability, and the future of your country's technological independence, this is the fight. Subscribe, share this video, leave a comment, and let us know where you stand, because silence is what let this happen, and awareness is the first step toward getting it right. We'll be watching every move. Stay loud, stay informed, stay with us.